Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ice Cream for Everyone podcast. This is Willem Vanderhorst, your host for the show. It's been a month since the last episode, and we're coming nearly to the end of the year and the end of this, what I've been calling the third season, which overall, let's admit it, a pretty poor season when it comes to the Ice Cream for Everyone podcast. A lot of amazing things in 2018, but not so many episodes of the podcasts. So if you're still listening to this, I appreciate there's not been tons to follow at the very least. I know that I've had a hard time following all the podcasts that I do listen to, and I actually slowed down deliberately this year to read more books, something I might have mentioned in another episode, but I'm not too sure right now. Embarrassingly, I've recorded this episode in the summer. On the other hand, it comes at pretty much the right time because I've had the chance of having a conversation with Folsom Skis. Folsom Skis are a small design ski manufacturers, craft ski, I guess, is the right term, craft ski manufacturers in Denver, Colorado. And I've had the chance of meeting them at my last weekend skiing this last season, actually, which was Easter weekend this year. And I tried a few different skis, and I'd spent the whole winter geeking out about brands and skis and what kind of brands would work best for me. What would I want to invest in if I had really invested into a proper pair of skis, which I hadn't yet. And then discovered the existence of custom skis. And I got really into the idea of having custom skis made. And call it vanity or design, vanity, let's call it. Really got excited about the idea of having my own designs on the skis. And so I have Ice Cream for Everyone skis. And I hadn't had them delivered. They were almost done. The design was almost done. It was just being finalized at the time I had the conversation with MikeMcCabe. Mike is one of the co-founders and designers and engineers at Folsom Skis in Denver. And I really, really appreciated their skis, essentially. And given how much I really got back into skiing over the past 2 years, I thought it'd be fun to have a conversation with a ski maker and talk about the sport de glisse, so skiing, and talk about ski making and like what goes into designing such a product. And I also hadn't really talked to people who craft and make products and how do they design them. So I thought it would be an interesting conversation. There was a little bit of a couple of snags, just to warn you, and I apologize for those in advance. Next year, let's start one thing at a time, the snags. So we started the conversation on one platform. The sound was really bad. I had to cut a couple of things. I cut mostly, and then it cuts over, and we had much better sound. So I've been trying to balance out and to cut about the right time. So the whole quality of the sound improves drastically after about 10-15 minutes or so. There's just a little passage at the end. I've removed some. I'm not totally certain of the transition, but overall it's okay. You're not missing much to the conversation, and it makes it a lot more audible, essentially. So I just thought I would mention that. And the other point I wanted to make is too many ums. I'm trying to get rid of my ums. So as much as possible. I went to an evening with Toastmasters a couple of months ago to check it out and to see how it's doing. I'm just looking for new opportunities and new activities, as well as networking, as well as making friends, as well as keep socializing in Chicago and find interesting things to do and new people to meet. So I thought it'd be interesting. So getting rid of ums and filler words is one of the things I'm working on at the moment. I haven't joined officially Toastmasters. I might go check a couple of other clubs. Probably one, they have the formal talks that are prepared, and then they give feedback to those. And then they do what's called table topics, which are people just come up front. They're given a topic and they have to talk off the cuff for about a minute about it. And I won one of the place after about, I think 10 people went through, and people voted for me as the most interesting. So I was quite happy with that. Just showing up the first time. I thought it was quite rusty from a public speaking perspective. Perhaps the podcast helps, although this year hasn't really helped much because, well, obviously this is my 4th episode published. But the plan is to regroup, recenter over the winter. I've been talking about redesigning my website for a little while, and it's about time I do that. I'm going to have some time over the winter. So regroup, reorganize exactly what I'm going to be about and what the podcast, it's not going to change format, but reorganize the website, reorganize my services, the way I talk about what I do, I want to put some new stuff up there as well. And but the thing to rethink a little bit is the Ice Cream Sunday newsletter, which you probably don't read it, but you can't read it anymore because I haven't published it in months. So it's been pretty lazy, and but you know, I have excuses, whatever. I could be talking about self-flagellation for a little while, but I'm not sure you're really interested in hearing about that. Or if you are, there's probably other people you can listen to. This intro is just a little bit longer than usual, but I thought I would give you a bit of news and just like ramble for a bit. You can obviously skip forward to the conversation if you don't want to listen to me ramble. Work-wise, I told you I finished working at one ad agency over the summer, and so did my trip through Europe and been like full on looking for new opportunities, and luckily they started coming about. So I had one really fun gig with an independent agency here in Chicago called The Escape Pod, working on a pitch with them, which was great. And currently working with another big ad agency on a freelance contract for a little bit. And I'm still looking for other opportunities, and I'm pondering, I'm going to take the time until the end of the year to keep looking at, do I keep freelancing and building my, I guess, consultancy, for lack of a better word. I mean, it's not a bad word. It's just basically right now freelancing with other ad agencies. But of course, I'd really love to develop my own clientele. And I'm working on that as defining what that's going to be and which direction that's going to be in on my new website. So that's coming up. And otherwise, what else? I'm very, very excited. The winter is coming and the ski season is coming. So I had even participated. Some of you might have seen, if we're friends on Facebook, there was a big competition organized by ski.com to be looking for a kind of social media brand ambassador. And the request was to put in, it was like to go travel around the world, win $10,000, ski in 18 different resorts in January and February. It sounded really exciting, obviously. And the request was to put together a video telling them in 60 seconds or less why you'd be the right candidate. So I spent a bit of time having fun and putting that together. And in the midst of doing that, I haven't done any more since then. I lost the competition. I was a little bit disappointed, but you know, there's a lot of different people putting in videos, and obviously a lot of really, really great ones. I got excited and interested in the idea of doing videos in addition to the podcast. So, of course, as usual, wondering where I should put my focus rather than getting dispersed. But I do enjoy trying my hand at a lot of different things, after all. I usually talk about being more of a jack of all trades as a strategist, and what turns me on is trying a lot of different new things and learning about new categories and finding new solutions. And ultimately, I think it gave me a wider perspective to be able to pull inspiration from different projects in different areas. It's also true at the same time that to be able to master and focus on something, you're supposed to be publishing and creating on a regular basis. And I'm not even doing that with a podcast at all. So first things first, I'll be redesigning the website and like that. So, you know, I'm still looking for contacts. I'm planning to come and spend a few days in New York, catch up with some people. If ever you're in New York and listening to this, don't hesitate giving me a shout. I'm obviously still in Chicago. If you have opportunities, if you need a freelance strategist, oh, by the way, wherever you are, I can travel around the country. If it's for short assignments, I could just like come wherever you are. So I'm working right now, but you know, the next gig I'll be looking for another gig soon enough. And in the meantime, I always want to be meeting new people, new events. As I said, there was like some amazing events I was at for Chicago Design Week last week. One event organized by Design for America about is everybody a designer was the topic. And it was a really, really good panel discussion between a few different people. The urban planning and designer for the city of Chicago, a person who works with children in neighborhoods in the south side of Chicago, a urban and experience designer. And then I went through another one at IA Collaborative, a design consultancy here in Chicago, about how do you design for the future you want. And again, a really, really interesting and excellent panel conversation over there. So out of all the conversations and the people I've met, I'm hoping to maybe get a few of those people on the podcast. So to have different kinds of designers. And I caught up on a couple of design documentaries from way back, but that are probably famous. If you're interested in design, you may have heard of them. But if you haven't heard of them, I highly recommend them. One is called Helvetica, the documentary about the history of the typeface and font, Helvetica. and how it's changed the world of design and graphic design since it's come out in 1957, I believe, if I remember correctly. And his other documentary, the same film director, Gary Hustvit, I don't know how it's pronounced, Hustvit, something like that, Urbanized. And so he did a few different documentaries, one Helvetica, Objectified, about industrial design, and which I'd seen before, and Urbanized, about urban design of cities and city planning. And that's fascinating. From 2011, I really, really loved it. I believe he just released a new documentary about a famous designer that the name escapes me right now, but something that I'll hopefully be watching soon. I'm recording this on election day. I'll probably be publishing this tomorrow, I expect, or later tonight. I'm not exactly sure. So I went out and voted this morning for the U.S. midterm elections. We'll see what kind of things happen at these elections. Well, I guess this is enough rambling for now. We're going to go into a number of different topics. Enough of my speaking. Ultimately, you're here to hear about the guests. Without further ado, here is MikeMcCabe from Folsom Skis. Hi, Mike. Welcome to the show.
How's it going, Willem?
It's going good. Thank you very much for making time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're scorching here in Denver right now. Glad to be sitting in my air-conditioned office.
It's the same here in Chicago. It's got really, really hot. And actually, now that we started the conversation, this is completely silly. So I live in an old building. It doesn't have AC installed. And it was really hot a couple of weeks ago. So I just finally invested in a AC unit. And I was planning to install it today, and now that I'm recording in this really warm room, I'm like, I should have done this just before this conversation rather than after. But anyway.
Well, I just lost my AC last night at my house, so that's the project for this weekend, to get that back up and running.
Yes, that's a whole operation. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to this conversation. So I'm excited that I don't get to talk to people who design things, basically, and products. And this is really, really interesting. And so you're the founder, owner, or one of the founders, I don't know, of Folsom Custom Skis, based in Denver, right?
Correct.
Excellent. And so we're going to be talking skis, and we're going to be talking mountain, and we're going to be talking how do you make that kind of product. But let's start with a few of the basics on who you are. Did you grow up in Colorado, or?
Yeah, I sure did. I grew up about 45 minutes north of Denver in Loveland, Colorado, and then haven't really left the state. I went to college at CU Boulder and launched the company in Boulder, and then have since moved it to Denver, moved the company to Denver in 2011. So I have been a Colorado boy since day one and don't have any plans on leaving anytime soon.
Awesome. So I'm expecting you probably grew up with skis, right? Or...
Yeah, absolutely. My folks had me on skis when I was, 2 or 3 years old, and then kind of, really started to take it seriously as soon as my older brother, was old enough to start driving us up to the mountains. So I think I was around 12 or 13 when that happened, and that's when I got into a lot of programs and started to really ski consistently. But yeah, I've been on skis since, realistically before I could walk.
That's amazing. I just learned when I was 10 years old. I grew up in France, and I was lucky enough to have they organized school trips that were at least at the time subsidized, so that a lot of people had an opportunity to at least go to the mountain and learn as children. And I didn't ski since. And then I relearned a couple of years ago, and I'm really, really getting back into it in the last couple of years. So I obviously don't have your level of experience, but it's really interesting to see. Well, obviously people who grow up by the mountain and able to learn at the same time or even before you're walking. So when you got seriously into it, what kind of pathway did you choose? What were you particularly interested in terms of skiing?
So, really my older brother was kind of the one that really got me into this. I was kind of the annoying younger sibling that just chased him around and did whatever he did. And so he was really into skiing, and he was really into mogul skiing up at Mary Jane at Winter Park. And so when we really got into it, I started to join those freestyle programs and started doing that at a competitive level in high school, and then did that for a couple years, kind of quit doing that around age 18, age 19, just because of the general wear and tear of what it was doing to my knees. I kind of pivoted and started to do some more big mountain stuff when I was going to college. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those sports that it's so diverse. There's so many different types of skiing. And I really did focus on just one attribute of it, with it, just being the freestyle side of things for a lot of years. And then when I started to kind of pivot and move into more big mountain stuff, it really just opened my eyes to how much different varieties of skiing there are out there. And, really the guys that I started skiing these big mountain competitions with all came from race backgrounds. And so I really kind of got into that aspect of the sport as well, really learning how to, have fundamentally proper technique to bend a ski correct. And, all those guys would always make fun of me because I was a bump skier and I was really squared up and kind of had some bad habits from that sport.
I'd like to dig into that a tiny bit, actually. That's interesting. So, because I don't know the terms very well. So moguls are, and free skiing is basically bump skiing. Is that right? Or
freestyle?
Freestyle, sorry,
is very specific to mogul skiing, and unfortunately, it's kind of a dying sport these days. There's not a lot left in it. And then free ride is a really general base term that can be a whole bunch of different types of skiing. It can be more, park oriented or kind of just big mountain. It just means that you are kind of looking at the terrain and choosing what you want to do with it, hence the term free ride.
And the term big mountain, I'm not sure what that one is. It that off-piste, or I don't?
Yes. Yeah. Off-piste, generally not lift access, ungroomed, real steep, severe stuff would be what big mountain refers to. So there's a whole competition series based behind that.
So in that kind of thing, just to understand I'm expecting when you're skiing bumps, is it like you're measured for competitively on speed and timing, or are there other criterias of judging?
Yeah, there's a couple. So speed and timing is one of them. So how quickly you're coming through it. Control is a big aspect of it. And then there are jumps in the middle of those courses. So your airs, you're judged on those. And I think they've kind of altered how they're doing it. But back in the early 2000s and late 90s when I was doing this, it was just really that. It was, how quickly you're getting down, your control, your form, and then your airs.
Got it. And on the big mountain side, what kind of stuff are you judged on? If it seems to be very varied from what I'm gathering, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so that one also keeps varying as well. They keep changing kind of the judging criteria behind that. When I was doing it, it was really, again, based off of your airs, your speed and control. Your line choice was a big part of it. So if you chose a really difficult line that had a lot of consequence in it, and you skied it really well and controlled, you would get scored much better. And they've kind of faded away from judging the airs so much. The airs used to be a big portion of big mountain, and kind of what that turned into is a lot of people just focusing too much on that part of it and not really focusing on the skiing. And they would just try to find the biggest air they could and just go send it off of that. And I think the judges kind of slowly started to pivot in the other direction, just so that it didn't turn into, just a huck fest, for lack of better terms.
Okay. And so you were doing a lot of competition at the time. What other interests did you have?
Outside of skiing?
Yeah, outside of skiing.
Yeah, so I grew up in a family that's heavily into boating. So I've always been behind a boat. I've kind of done every different type of water sport you can imagine, from water skiing to wakeboarding to surfing and hydrofoil, all the different things. But I actually took wakeboarding to a very competitive level as well. Did that for quite some time. And on top of that, I've ridden motocross for a very long time. That's another sport that's been really important to me for, probably 20 years now. Those are kind of the big two other sports.
So
and
those
I've
are
kind
all
of chose some really expensive ones to be involved in.
I was going to say, like, they're the kind of expensive activities and all pretty much considered to be thrill slash possibly dangerous kinds of activities. Do you think one leads to another, or?
Absolutely. I mean, it's all based off of kind of that adrenaline that you're always trying to seek. You know, I never really got into the ball sports, the team sports. I just never really did that. I participated a little bit in my younger ages in high school as well. I did a little bit of, you know, football and basketball and stuff of that variety. But really at the end of the day, what really made me excited was being able to, you know, really be in control of what I was doing and really push my own personal limits and really get my heart pounding. So that's kind of why I've chose, you know, sports like motocross, skiing, wakeboarding, things like that. It's kind of independent sports and all on that action sports side, really adrenaline driven. So I certainly think they're tied together.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people kind of, you know, call us what you action sport junkies, whatever, but I'd say it's pretty accurate.
Yes.
We're all kind of like-minded individuals for sure.
Yeah. Do you think everybody's looking for the same thing? Because what I mean by that, I was interested in the couple conversations I've had and the little experience that I'm having in learning to ski is that I really do like looking for having control, and there's always that balance between, or at least in what I'm experiencing, like there's a moment, I think a very, very short moment where I'm experiencing some kind of flow and being in balance between how much I'm in control and how much I let go. And then I've talked to other people who have been described to me by other people, and they talked about them like being power skiers and just like bombing down through with not necessarily any skill to be able to manage how fast they're going, which is not necessarily, I don't think, my style. I'm not sure. So these guys probably, you know, majoring on the adrenaline rush more than being in control kind of thing. But does that experience of like trying to find a balance to be in flow resonate with you, or?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, honestly, I feel like the more you do these sports, the harder it is to find that balance because you just become so, you know, immune to what's going on while you're doing it. Like skiing, for example, I've been doing it for so long and I've skied at such an aggressive, fast pace for such a long time. It's become harder and harder for me to really find that balance of when I'm like, oh boy, I'm actually out of control. And I need to slow this back down and kind of check my reality. So I'd say that's a really hard piece of these types of sports is really kind of staying in check and making sure that you're, you know, really still within your ability set and not just pushing it too far, too fast. Because, you know, unfortunately, there's injuries and you know, very severe injuries are a very common thing in all these types of sports. And, you know, the longer I've been in this, the more I've seen that. And I'm starting to kind of, you know, cool down a little bit with those decisions. One, just because I'm, you know, getting a little bit older, and two, you know, I've got a pretty important business to run. So I've had to kind of get in check with that stuff to make sure I'm not getting, you know, flying out of control and hurting myself and letting down a lot of other people if I can't be at work.
Did you have any particularly story-worthy falls or injuries?
Oh, man, tons. The most recent one that really kind of shook me up was about, 2 seasons ago. I was finishing a day of skiing up at Aspen Mountain and was coming right down, like in the very last part of the mountain, like maybe a 200 vertical feet left. And I hit this little jump that I had hit already, you know, 10 times that day. And it was kind of like a transition from where the cat track dropped off to another much steeper run. And I launched off this cat track, went to hit my transition, and a bamboo marker was knocked down, and I landed right on that. And it just took my feet out, and I had a very, very severe fall. I was probably going, you know, realistically in the 50 to 60 mile per hour range. And just had a very violent tumble and heard this really loud snap in the middle of my fall, and was assuming that I broke my ski, you know, something like that happened. And kind of when the dust settled and I sat down, I felt a lot of heat in my boot, which is never a good indication of injury. And so I started feeling down onto my lower left leg, and there was this rock hard bump right below my knee. And so I personally, thought I just broke the lower leg. That's a bone, protruding out and kind of pushing against the skin there. And so, I got taken down, went to ER, and when I was seeing Doc, he slipped my boot off, and I, about to fall, and yeah, you did not break your leg. You actually snapped your Achilles tendon, and that's what it is, all coiled up in the top of your knee there. So that was a real severe one, and I was just not familiar with that injury in that sport in skiing. I just wasn't thinking like that. That's what kind of made me think I had broke a bone. But, after I went through the whole ER visit and everything, the doctor was he's like, yeah, you'd be much better off if you actually did break your lower leg instead. But yeah, there's been a multitude of other wrecks and broken bones and concussion and all these other things. It's just, that one was kind of the most, eye-opening for me in the last decade, I'd say. But and now that I'm tuned in with it, I feel like I've met a lot of other guys in the sport that have done it as well. It's just one of those injuries that I had no idea you could really do inside a ski boot. And clearly, and then it seems like it happens to a fair amount of other people. But it's a tough one. It's a tough one to come back from.
I was going to ask next. I think I saw, I went to lurk a little bit. I mean, I was looking through the Folsom Skis website and I was looking through a bunch of stuff, but just back still on a couple of years ago, well, I mean, more than a couple, but I was interested in your studies. You seem to have studied ecology and biology or evolutionary biology. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. You would think with what I do today, I would have been a formally trained engineer, but that is not the case. I grew up in a very engineering-minded family as well as environment, working for a number of different manufacturing companies at a very young age, and just really didn't have a whole lot of plan moving into college. I was kind of thinking of medicine, so I was just kind of getting a general base ecology and evolutionary biology degree to move that forward. And I just really enjoyed that study. It was a really, really fun major to have, and I learned a lot of really unique stuff. And it's actually been more applicable than you'd think, because it's just given me a really scientific way of looking at everything.
That's interesting.
I'm much better at breaking down variables than most engineers, because they're kind of looking at more of the numbers and the metrics behind it, whereas I just kind of take a much more scientific approach. So yeah, it was kind of one of those things where I didn't, when you're 18 years old and you're going to college, it's hard to know, like, well, hey, yes, I'm going to start a ski business and start building skis. Like I really had no idea. So hindsight's 2020. I kind of wish I would have had the, mechanical engineering background, but I'd say I've done pretty well without it.
It seems like it. Yeah. I'm curious. I don't know if I have no idea if that had anything to do with your degree or anything that you studied, but one of the points about engineering and having studied biology, I know that there's a lot of architectural and manufacturing and engineering that is inspired, after all, by nature, right?
Absolutely.
Natural shapes and things like the golden number. And I remember seeing there was something about blue whale fins that inspired the way that, I can't remember what it was, either like an airplane wing or a building shape, a lot of different things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and nature's just such a big aspect of skiing in general. And I've always been that kind of person that just likes to know kind of how everything works, whether it be, our natural world that we live in or some mechanical piece that's built. And I guess that's probably one of the biggest things that really spurred me to move in that direction, to study that, was I was just so curious about, what nature was and what actually made everything function.
Cool.
So yeah, it was interesting. And I really enjoyed that time that I took at CU Boulder, because it's a really unique degree. It's not really offered at too many other big notable schools. Evolutionary biology is a really, really unique degree. It's pretty fun.
Fantastic. And so I think you started Folsom just shortly after you graduated. So how did it all start? Like moving from it being a sport and a passion and a side thing into a whole business?
Yeah. So, I was competing while I was in college in those big mountain competitions. And to kind of help, myself through school while I was doing that, I was working for an individual flipping homes. He was, the main guy, but I was kind of his right-hand guy, just doing everything from full tear down and build out the whole way through. And through him, I actually met another individual named Jordan Grano, that really had a lot of the business figured out. So he really, is the true founder of Folsom Custom Skis. And he kind of had a lot of the nuts and bolts figured out, had the business plan figured out. And when I joined up with him in 2006, I graduated college in 07. Him and I started kind of working together in 06. It really just got catalyzed that much more because I was able to come in and really bring my engineering knowledge and my knowledge to really apply how to build skis and apply it to the snow that much better. So when him and I teamed up in 06, we kept working together, testing some more products, really refining the system for another year and a half. And then we launched the company in 08. And then so Jordan and I operated it together for 4 years. And then this is just a really tough business and a really tough industry in general.
I'm imagining, yeah. I mean, it's probably, yeah, sorry, keep going.
And so
how do you, sorry, just to dig in a little bit, like you said you knew how to build this. Like I was looking at a few of the videos from your manufacturing plan. And then out of curiosity, I looked at a couple of videos on YouTube about bigger ones, some of the big brands. There's like some videos from Rossignol and Dynastar and just, it's not, I mean, where do you start on knowing how to build such a thing? And it's not it's not like, oh, I'm going to take my laptop and start a business. There's like quite a few heavy machinery involved, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I met Jordan, he had a small CNC machine set up in his garage, mm-hmm. and a small ski press and a little bit of woodworking equipment. And we were actually building some very good product with just those couple pieces. And there was certainly a massive learning curve for both of us when it came into that, and really realizing how much really large equipment you need to do this properly. And so we were yielding, maybe 5 to 10 products or pairs of skis over the course of a couple winters, just really refining it. And then when we really launched the company, we moved to a facility in North Boulder that was about 2,000 square feet. And we got a bunch more equipment and really started to refine the process from there. So yeah, it was certainly a big learning curve for both of us, to kind of really dig in and figure out like, wow, you really need a lot of stuff to do this. And I'd say that's probably the most common thing when people come to our facility is they really have no idea how skis are built. And when they walk into the back of our facility and see all the stuff we have back there, it's just like, wow, why do you have all these things? And it's like, well, they all have a purpose and they're all very, very much so needed across this whole process. So, it's certainly daunting from a couple different aspects when you're starting to get this going. It's very capital intensive to, have to buy all this equipment, have to keep all this equipment moving and running correctly. And then the materials as well is another very expensive aspect of,
I'm sure.
It's, you're using some very expensive high-tech stuff like, aerospace grade carbon fibers and different types of epoxies. And it's just the list goes on of how that gets costly. So,
and did you go through, is it mostly like trial and error to be choosing what types of materials you're going to be working with for what types of skis? And do those vary quite a bit between like any type of manufacturer or the big manufacturers versus the small craft ones like you are? Or
yeah, it's a bit of trial and error or trial and error. you can certainly kind of map things out and have a bit of an understanding before you actually put it into the ski and really know what it's going to do. But really over the last decade of me doing this, I've gotten very, very good at being able to kind of predict what oscillations and material usage is actually going to do to the ski. And it really does vary a lot across how we're going to be building a ski. So, you know, for example, like if I'm building myself a ski, I'm 6'2", 205 pounds, a very aggressive skier. I'm using much different materials than I would be using for, you know, somebody that's under 200 pounds and not nearly as aggressive. And, you know, it's just different wood types, different composite pieces that we're using in there.
So for example, just to narrow things down a little bit, I saw a couple of things I saw in the video and well, I mean, disclosing, I'm a customer as well. Yep. And I've tried your skis and I'm getting a pair and I'm very excited about it. And I believe the type of wood I'm getting, and I think it's one that's mentioned in a few different videos. So it seems to be one of your base, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, that has poplar and bamboo core.
Correct.
And it seems like they're, if I understand correctly from the making, and I'm just describing this for audio because people are listening, right? There's like small laminates and like along the length of the ski, and the outside is poplar and the inside is bamboo sort of thing. Is that right? Or
correct. Yep. So
towards the edges is poplar, towards the inside is bamboo.
Correct. Yep. So we actually have 3 different core type blends, which really kind of sets the personality of the ski right off the bat. And then you can adjust a bunch of other things, and we can get into that in a minute here. But essentially the 3 different core blends are a poplar bamboo blend, a poplar maple bamboo blend, and then an aspen bamboo blend. So we use bamboo in the same way across all the different core blends. We're using it right down the middle of the ski. So there's a 1/2-inch stringer that runs right down the center of the core. And what we're using that for is just strictly vibration dampening. So we're not really relying on it as a structural piece. It does inherently add structure to it, but we're using it more as a vibration dampener. And essentially the best analogy there is it's kind of like soundproofing a room, where you're taking those sound wave frequencies and sending them through different densities of foam, and eventually it kills the cadence on that frequency. That's the same exact concept that we're using this bamboo for. Is it's a much, much different density material than any of the other wood or composite or metal or plastic that's in your ski. And so as those vibration frequencies enter the ski, it gets sent through a much, much different density stringer, so that as it travels through the tips and tails and makes it to where your feet are connected to the skis and the binding, you're not feeling any of those vibrations. And it really does a very, very good job at that. And in the early years, we were actually using more bamboo. And what we found was if you did too much bamboo, if you really made the core very bamboo dominant, the skis just became too damp and not really lively enough. And so that's where we started playing with other types of wood to kind of gain the attributes we wanted to gain out of those types of wood. So poplar is a pretty light, lively compound, or wood rather. And so,
sorry, just the bamboo in terms of properties, it has a very high density compared to other woods. And is it also very light? I mean, just I have the idea of a bamboo being light, but I don't know if it's not actually.
It's not. Okay. Most people think of bamboo as a very light building material, but it's not really, because it only grows to a 1/4 inch wall thickness, and then it's laminated together a bunch of times. So you gain a lot of glue weight with bamboo. And there are a lot of companies that use just strictly bamboo as their cores. And, you know, I'm not going to name any names, but they've done a good job at it. And it's honestly an easier material to work with than a lot of the other stuff that we're using. But yeah, that's essentially what it is it's just a much denser, and it's not actually, that's not terribly correct. It's just the molecular structure of it is much different than any other kind of hardwood. If you were to look at a bamboo piece underneath a microscope, it's got these really strange looking sinutes that almost look like foam. It almost looks like nature's foam. And then if you were to look at like a piece of poplar or maple or aspen underneath a microscope, it's got a much different cluster of molecular connections, where it's much more tightly bound versus bamboo is more open. And so it's not necessarily denser. It's just much different in density comparative to the rest of the stuff in there.
Wow. Okay. Super interesting. And how did you, so where to start? I know that one of the things that you guys do at Folsom is you have a certain amount of set shapes. I mean, you could make a ski however somebody wants if they know exactly how they want it. But for me, for example, I didn't know what I was looking for, and I found out about craft and custom skis, and I got really interested in the idea because I just got interested in the idea. And well, we're having this conversation, right? I'm the same way. I'm interested in how things are made, how things are designed. And if there's a small company going on, I get interested immediately in small businesses. Mm-hmm. And but immediately, as I started doing some research and looking at small ski manufacturers, then the question came as to, well, wait a minute, I've never tried this ski. How do I know how it feels?
Right.
And I understand one of the ways in which you alleviate that is to have those set kind of shapes so that you have more sets in the way that you build them. But that said, I'm rather than answering my own question, I'd rather ask you where you came about and how you came about with the idea of shapes and like that.
Yeah. So we kind of take a different approach to customization than really our biggest other competitor out there that's doing this would be Wagner Custom Skis. Mm-hmm. And he's doing unique geometries all the time. The reason that we chose not to do that and kind of have some more fixed shapes is there's so much you can do within those shapes to change them. And I just wasn't comfortable with having that geometry variable constantly oscillating because it was just one more variable that was just going to have to get, placed into this whole equation. And so really what we did was, we looked at all your big box skis. We looked at, your K2s, your Atomics, whomever, all these big relevant ski companies. And we just kind of looked at like, okay, here's where we want to be in the market. Here's what we want to build. Let's kind of look at these shapes and then create our own versions of those and then do customizations within those. So like, for example, just because it's more relatable here. So like we're doing a Trigger 2 for you. And I actually just pulled open my spreadsheet just so I'd know exactly what that build is, just to have it fresh in front of me here. But so for example, we can take that Trigger 2 shape and do all kinds of different things with it. We can make it a very, all mountain friendly ski, which is what we're really doing for you. Or we can make that ski very, specific to like park skiing, or we can make it just way, way more so just a front side carving style ski just by changing the types of materials that we're putting in there, some simple geometry shifts that we're allowed to do within our molding. So we can, change tail shapes. We can change tip shapes. We can flatten tails right off to make a really, traditional flat tail ski that's going to have a really hard finish to the turn. We can give it a little bit of a turn up to kind of have a little bit more all mountain attributes in it. We can have a full twin tip on it. We can do all kinds of different things with how we're tapering and changing those skis from both the materials aspect as well as just a small geometry changes that we can do within those cassettes. And there are certain cases where somebody will come to us and they've just got a very, very, very specific idea of a geometry that they want. And in that case, we will build an entirely new mold for them. But it's really insane how much we can change within our molding. Like I can make a ski out of the exact same mold that works very well for somebody like me. And then I can make it out of the exact same mold and make it work very well for somebody who's not nearly as aggressive or as big as I am. And that's really just strictly off of the small little levers that we can pull as we're going through that build process.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are tons. It's fascinating just to learn every single small change in a ski, what it can do. And it's down also, and everything is different based on who is skiing it, how well they ski, what their body's like, and what kind of snow they want to ski on and what kind of mountain they want to ski on. Are those like all those little changes that you're talking about? I'm sure there's, as we said earlier, there's some trial and error, but is there also a lot of things that are just known in the industry because a lot of other ski manufacturers have done it that way before? And does the industry like evolve in terms of innovation and design sort of together by one copying another, or are there things that are very specific to one manufacturer and not another? There's a pretty open question, right? But
yeah, and that's kind of tough to answer quickly.
okay. I thought it might be.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's certainly like all these different companies, especially the North American companies. You know, there's not a lot of us. There's really just a handful left in the U.S. that are doing it. And generally, we all communicate with each other kind of about, you know, if we have something cool that we're working with. There are some other companies that have kind of chose to keep their processes a little bit more proprietary. Yeah. But we're all definitely working together to kind of help evolve the sport together and come up with new innovative materials and ideas together. And there's some certain companies that have really been pushing that envelope for a very long time. For example, DPS Skis has really been on that forefront of, you know, working with really wild materials, doing really, you know, unique and different geometry changes and stuff. So they've really been pushing that envelope in a pretty aggressive way for a long time. And it's cool to see that. And it's great to have companies out there that are doing that. And certainly there's times where, you know, those things just don't work out so well. And they'll go do a whole production run of skis with skis that just really aren't built exactly as they should be, for lack of better terms. And that's one of the many legs up of being a small custom company like this, is I don't have to commit to batching out a couple hundred units or a couple thousand units of the exact same. Like, we're changing stuff every single day, every single time. So, you know, from my perspective, I just get to see so much difference in how we're building every single day. And it's really just made me a much better ski builder because I don't really just do the same thing over and over and over again. So we're just constantly oscillating and being able to, you know, refine with what we're doing. And I'm really slow to introduce a new material. I really do like to have it run through our system for at least a year of skiing underneath my feet and some other people that I really trust and know can speak to me very accurately about, you know, what the ski's doing or not doing. And so, like, for example, when we started doing full carbon fiber skis, so we just introduced that like 2 seasons ago, maybe 3 seasons ago. We started offering a build type that was just strictly all carbon fiber for your composite with no fiberglass in there to make a really light ski. And that took me upwards of 2 years to really be comfortable and know that we could have accurate custom builds coming out with those, because that's a big variable to change.
Wow.
And so, yeah, whenever we're introducing new materials, it really does run through at least a year, if not 2 seasons of our beta before that we'll actually introduce it into the normal product line.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's fun to have that, you know, that's my favorite part of the job, honestly, is constantly looking out there and trying to find what's the cool new material that we can use. And it's hard to navigate on what's relevant and what's not. And that's why I really do take that slow approach to making sure that, okay, if I'm going to put this in here, it should actually be doing what I'm saying it's doing, not just saying it and, you know, trying to boost sales with some buzzwords or things of that nature. Like, I really want a good feelable, you know, thing that I'm introducing into this ski to make it really shine and hopefully set us apart from the rest.
Very cool. And so what kind of people come to you, or is there any spread? Is it a big spread and a mix between anybody who's like beginner to intermediate versus experts, or people that are competing, or?
It's honestly all over, but our biggest part of the market of people that come to us is, I would say, intermediate, advanced, expert skiers, mostly male. Unfortunately, we don't do a great job, you know, appealing to the female market. We're doing better, and we make very, very good female skis. We just haven't really done a lot of marketing behind it. But the real meat of the people that are coming through here and buying skis from us are, again, pretty seasoned skiers that are quite good, generally male, and usually in between the ages of around 30 to around 65. So we're appealing to a lot of different people as well, but that's kind of the main group of the market that we're approaching.
Which kind of, I guess, makes sense because like this is obviously more expensive than a regular ski. And if you're only skiing maybe once a season, then you're probably renting skis.
Yep.
I'm guessing, right?
Yeah. Well, and there's there's a whole lot of outliers there as well. And that's something that we're trying to kind of break through is, really good skiers can honestly kind of make any ski do what they want because they're good skiers and they can just force it and make it happen. So clearly they're going to benefit from having a good custom built ski because it's going to be something that they're, really, really adamantly wanting. Generally it's somebody that's tried a bunch of other things and is kind of like, yeah, I like this about this and I didn't like this and blah, blah, blah. And we can kind of hone in on all those factors and build them exactly what they want. But what we're really trying to prove here is that a lot of, beginner to intermediate level skiers benefit from custom skis more so than anybody else out there at those higher ability levels, because, that is the hardest part of the sport from my perspective, is having those skis that are really working well with you and not working against you in any way. And when you're a beginner or intermediate, you don't really know that. It's harder to be skiing and be like, well, this is what I was disliked. I didn't like this about this ski. And so if you actually just have something that's actually just simply built around some simple metrics on who you are, height, weight, where you want to ski these things and past experiences, stuff like that, it really makes a big, big difference and allows beginner level skiers to excel that much quicker and kind of have those breakthrough moments on skis that much more effectively.
That is really, really interesting. And I've heard this a little bit in our previous conversation, and I got excited about the idea. And, and the other thing for me is like, okay, you know what? I've invested a lot the last season, and I'm committing myself by investing in the skis and saying, okay, well, by investing in the skis, I'm going to make it worth my while, and I'm going to keep investing time and effort into the activity, into the sport. And
yeah, and that's that's a really good way of putting it. And I always say that to people when I'm kind of in a sales pitch, is like, hey, skiing is expensive and it's a big investment in general just to get up there and take the time and spend all this money to travel up there, spend the money to actually be able to use the lifts and have all the equipment. Like, is it really worth saving a couple $100 and having a much worse pair of skis that's making your day that much, worse while you're on snow? Like, just spend a couple extra $100 and know with confidence that you're going to have a ski that's actually working with you and going to give you that much better of an experience when you're on the hill.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of other thoughts I was thinking, like back to, age made me, when you're talking about the age of your customer group, made me think of this other thing that I've heard from someone, and I've not really done the research, but I'm interested because I work in marketing and things about brands and categories and businesses are interesting. And I've been reading up about the ski industry overall. And I've ever heard this thing that the sport is aging, that there's less young people that are entering skiing. I don't know if it's because of price or whatever else. I was wondering if you've heard anything of the like, or if you know that to be either true or not true, or...
I have actually heard that, and the metrics that I've seen don't really support it.
Okay.
But, I don't have access to a lot of metrics that could support that. I'm kind of just looking at some things that are available to me from like ISPO and the man, I'm totally pulling a blank here. What's the big trade show here in Denver?
That's okay. Ski trade show.
I don't know why I can't think of it. Okay. It's like the most common trade show.
But you've heard that, and the related question, I guess, and that was associated, is the expansion and consolidation of the really big groups of ski resorts, right? So Vail Resorts on one end and Altera offering the Icon Pass on the other. And I'm wondering, that's big changes inside of the ski industry that are gobbling up the very smaller resorts and smaller operators. Wondering, but at the same time, having these season passes that maybe give more people a chance to, or I don't know if a chance is the right word, but incentivize more people to come and try. I wonder if that's what your experience of that is.
Yeah, I certainly think that's a good point. And, it's hard to say if that's a great thing that these two big companies are really coming in and kind of just owning all the ski resorts. But at the end of the day, it is opening it up to a bigger audience because it's making skiing more affordable. And, I mean, just like what happened with the whole Arc'teryx or the Icon Pass thing is like, a normal ski pass at Aspen Mountain used to be like $1,800. Now you can go get 20 days there on the Icon Pass, which is shy of $1,000. So, it really is opening it up to a broader market of people. And, Denver is just so thriving right now. And it's got so many young people moving here that are moving here specifically for the outdoor activities that are available in our backyard here. So I've personally seen a much younger crowd, going to the mountains that I've been going to for years and years and years, because it just like Denver in general is getting younger. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that it's kind of interesting, and I never really thought of it like that.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I know at the same time, those two big companies, as much as when I got back into it and I found out when I moved to the States a couple of years ago, how expensive a lift day pass was. And I was just coming from the French Alps where it's a third of the price pretty much for the day. The infrastructure is different, but still, at the end of the day, the other thing that is interesting is in France, they're not consolidated resorts. So the restaurant that is on top of the mountain is a little restaurant by a dude that owns it. So it doesn't have a cafeteria style food. And so anyway, those are the kinds of things that I'm sure are a little bit difficult to evaluate. But on the other hand, when I saw the price of an Epic Pass and like what it would, I jumped on it. I was like, well, yeah, it's a no brainer. I'm just going to take it.
Right. Yeah. So cheap.
Exactly. So we're going to start wrapping up a bit, but what are the things, a couple of questions. What would you say Folsom is really great at? Like if anybody's interested in buying, I don't know, where you start with one question is I'm wondering, at what point is it worth looking at getting your own skis? I mean, of course, it's a rule of thumb. It could be any time. And as you said earlier, it's really worth when you're beginning, going on to intermediate and advancing, it's worth getting your own set of skis. And what would you say is Folsom is particularly great at? What is it like? Why come and look at Folsom versus another custom ski maker?
Well, there's a couple good things I guess a couple answers to that. One, we've been around for a long time. We're coming up on a decade. So we have a lot of build knowledge and history where we've done a lot of builds over a lot of time and really been able to test all these things and make sure that what we're doing is actually working well for these clients. And our completion rate of having a happy client at the end of the day is through the roof. It's somewhere in that 95 percentile range. We have very few clients come back to us with any kind of gripes about their skis. Sure, certainly that still happens, but when you kind of open up this conversation, it's just you got to make sure that you're really thorough when you're speaking with individuals. So we're really good at that. We're really good at taking the time to really understand who you are as a skier, kind of what you want to do on these particular skis. And then we have a very, very good execution of that product. Just our general customer service is through the roof. Like if you call the shop line, generally you're going to get me or, one of three other guys that work here. We're just a small company. So you get much better customer service and you don't kind of run into those scenarios where you just get pushed around on an endless chain of phone tag with different people that never actually get back to you. So that's another big attribute that just makes this whole process so easy is it's a lot of personal time and care to make sure that we're really making a better product for you. And then also we have a small volume, we're not building thousands and thousands of skis. So I guess the best analogy there would be it's kind of your Hyundai versus a Bentley. Like your Hyundai is a good car. It's going to last a long time. It's going to work. But if you really want that nice, really, really well-built piece of machinery, you go buy a Bentley if you can afford it. But, and like that's certainly a very severe example, but it's kind of the same thing. Like we're just not building that many units, so we can really watch everything with a very, very close eye and make sure that only the best materials are winding up in there. And additionally, above all this, we're one of only a few companies left in the entire world that actually keeps all of the manufacturing under one roof. So we don't outsource any layer of this. And that just gives us a better consistency on how we're actually building. So, we're manufacturing our own wood cores in-house. We're doing all of our manufacturing from, making our own tooling to actually pressing the skis and finishing them. So it just gives us another level of precision that a lot of other companies just can't really do when they're making that many more skis. And then above all that, like some people it's really important, some people it's not, but you get to make your skis look the way you want.
Yeah.
And the way your graphic is awesome. And I can't wait to see that thing print it out, because when that landed in my inbox a few days ago, I was like, holy cow, this is so cool.
Thank you.
That's a big part of it. And like, if you're going to be stuck with some skis on your feet for a number of years, you may as well like the way they look.
Yeah.
And not be stuck with some awful graphics with just skulls and crossbones all over them or whatever,
Totally.
That's a big aspect, is like,
I got excited by the custom graphic, and I started having the graphic I sent over is what I had in mind when I started looking at, like, could I get my own skis? And and the illustrators got so excited about the brief itself that they're spending more time putting stuff over the weekend. I said, okay, we're ready. And it's like, no, I want to keep like adding some details. Can you please leave me the weekend to add? I'm just like making it better. I'm like, okay. Guys insisting to keep doing more work on it. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll just come around. So for everyone, I'll talk about the graphic a little bit more and I'll unveil it. But it's the Ice Cream for Everyone podcast, and those are the Ice Cream for Everyone skis coming up, basically.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool. Well, if I have your permission, can I use that one on some social media and stuff?
Yeah, sure.
It's too cool to not share with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll be sharing it. Yeah, for sure. And actually, I usually finish with a couple of cool down questions, and it's the Ice Cream for Everyone podcast. We talked about how warm it is at the beginning. What kind of, do you have a go-to flavor that you pick if you have any ice cream?
Yeah, it's kind of bland, but I'm a coconut fiend. Coconut ice cream.
Coconut's
all
good.
Day.
It's a great choice. Yep. Very, very good. Yep. Excellent. And
coconut milk, coconut ice cream, coconut everything. I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Actually, another question. You were talking about the whole world. So just before, do you have customers from around the world? Like, can anybody contact you or?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually sell a lot in Europe.
Cool.
Some really strange places that you would never think of where people are purchasing skis. We've sold to like Egypt, Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A couple to Russia. That's a real nightmare trying to ship to Russia. But yeah, quick answer is, we sell all over the world. And, if somebody can't speak English very well, we have gone through some translators to simplify that whole thing. But generally, for better or for worse, English is a pretty common language across the world. So we haven't had too many language barriers there. But yeah, so we sell all over the place. It's pretty wild how often we sell outside of the country. Clearly we do a lot in Canada, but we sell overseas a lot.
All right, cool.
Like probably once a week we're making a sale across the pond.
And last one, anything that you've read recently or seen that you particularly loved and would recommend to the people listening? Could be anything from a TV show to an article or a book or.
Well, yeah, actually, I don't read a lot, and what I do read is very bland and business driven. So I wouldn't suggest too much of those.
Well, we do have some business listeners, so.
Yeah, I did just read How Google Works, which was a really unique read. Lots and lots of crazy information yielded from that.
Okay.
And then a show that I just got into and binge watched was about the Unabomber. What was that called? Manhunt.
Yes.
It was really well done and really.
The trailer's been. All right, cool.
Real crazy guy. Apparently he had like 170 IQ and just super brilliant, just wild.
Fantastic.
Well worth,
and I would say. The other one is How Google Works. I have not heard of it. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's a good book. It's definitely a bit of a dry read, but I like that sort of stuff.
Good.
But yeah, How Google Works is a really good one. And then, Manhunt. Check it out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Mike. Have a great weekend and a great day.
Absolutely, Willem.
All right, that's it. Another episode wrapped up. Another episode of the Ice Cream for Everyone podcast. The 4th episode this year. We'll see if there's a 5th or not. I'm not even going to make any promises at this point. But thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to the whole episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have ideas, if you want to be on the podcast, don't hesitate giving me a shout. You can find me on my website. That's everything spelled out, www.icecreamforeveryone.net. I'm on Twitter at ICWillem. So letters I and C WILLEM. There's the Ice Cream for Everyone page on Facebook. You can tweet at me. You can email me, Willem@icecreamforeveryone.net. Or you can just type in my name or Google Ice Cream for Everyone, and eventually you will find me. If ever you're still listening to this, consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. I would really, really love to have a review from you. It really helps other people find the show. Not insisting on it all that much in this particular episode, or at least in the intro part of the episode, just because, well, I need to get a little bit more consistent with the amount of episodes I'm publishing. So, as I said at the beginning, I'm regrouping, and we'll see how that works out. In the meantime, happy Thanksgiving if you're in the States. Happy end of year if you're anywhere else. And happy day, evening, morning, night, whatever time of day or night it is for you. I'll talk to you later.